A wonderful and a blessed Sunday to everyone. We are glad to see all of you here joining us in this worship service, and is it our prayer that you will be blessed as well as we will also listen to the very word of the Lord. The school year is about to come to an end, and many of the students are excited for the vacation. In fact, my children were asking me just recently, "Papa, how long is our vacation?" And I told them it's about 2 months. They are excited to sleep up to around even 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock in the morning, that they don't have to wake up so early to go to school. They're excited for that. They're excited for the vacation. But I believe when the month of May is about to come to an end as well, the excitement would shift towards the opening of the classes again. And I could still remember when I was a young boy, I was excited every May because we were given new notebooks by our parents. And every time we receive a new notebook for the opening of another school year, I usually inscribe my name to it. I put my name, I make sure that my name is written at the back cover of the notebook or at the front back flip of the notebook, that when I would misplace it, the one who finds it could easily identify the owner of the notebook. So usually I put my name, and before my name is the statement, personal property of. Diba? Those of you who were in the 90s, you experienced that as well. You put that line, personal property of, and then your name comes after that. And that made me so excited. But I had a classmate, a lady, she was very artistic in the way she did it, because she didn't like to inscribe her name. Instead, every opening of classes, I observed that her notebook, even if it did not have a name, her name, she put a cut picture. Her face is put at the very cover of the notebook. I don't know what was in her mind, why she does that. But maybe she doesn't like the photos of the actors and actresses back then. You know what, in the 90s, if you buy notebooks, especially if you live in the province, the usual covers are pictures of celebrities. In our time, I would mention si Romnick Sarmiento, si Jao Mapa, yun yung panahon namin back then. Those were the images that served as cover of the notebooks. And my classmate didn't like it. So probably she didn't like it. And so she cut a picture from their albums. And every opening of classes, I would see her notebooks covered and with her face in front of it without any name. Well, that worked for her as well, because every time she misplaced her notebook, the classmates who find it would easily identify that it belongs to her. And because it is properly identified that it belongs to her, nobody would dare do something with that notebook, because the person knows that it is not his, and so he has to return it to the owner. Because inscribing your name or putting your image is a basis for a person to claim that that object belongs to me. Okay? When we inscribe our name to an object, or when we put our image to an object, it could become a basis for us to say a claim that that belongs to me, and that's why I am the person who has the authority over that object, because I have my inscription or I have my image on it. Now, this idea of images placed on an object is not new in our time, because even in the time of Jesus, whenever something is bearing an image of someone, that person would be the authority over that object. So let's discover this truth as we delve into the book of Matthew, chapter 25, verses 15 to 22. Matthew 22, verses 15 to 22. I'll repeat, Matthew 22, verse 15 up to verse 22. It says here, "Then the Pharisees went and plotted together how they might trap him in what he said. And they sent their disciples to him, along with the Herodians, saying, Teacher, we know that you are truthful and teach the way of God in truth, and differ to no one, for you are not partial to any. Tell us then, what do you think? Is it lawful to give a poll tax to Caesar or not? But Jesus perceived their malice and said, Why are you testing me? You hypocrites! Show me the coin used for the poll tax. And they brought him a denarius. And he said to them, Whose likeness and inscription is this? They said to him, Caesar's. Then he said to them, Then render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God that are God's. And hearing this, they were amazed, and leaving him, they went away. May the good Lord bless the reading of His Word. You know, the idea of an image, the concept of an inscription is clearly stated in this text. And that inscription of words and putting an image to something would mean a claim of authority. Now, the concept of authority flows through the chapters of the book of Matthew. Last week, I preached about from Matthew chapter 21, and we discussed about the visitation of Jesus in the temple. Remember, I told you that Jesus was introduced as an authoritative figure, that he was introduced as the Son of David, a figure that is related to the Messiah. He called himself the Son of Man, a figure that was predicted in the book of Daniel chapter 7. And then he was introduced as somebody riding on a donkey towards Jerusalem, a figure that is depicting a king. And now when he entered Jerusalem, he went directly to the temple. When he got inside the temple, what did he find? He found businessmen selling and buying things inside. And so what did Jesus do? He asserted his authority by driving away those who were selling and buying inside the temple. That was an assertion of an authority. When you drive someone out, that's an authority at work. And then after which, the Bible clearly tells us that he also turned upside down the tables of the money changers. And then he also turned upside down the benches of those selling doves. Jesus clearly asserted his authority inside the temple. And then after which it was mentioned in chapter 21 that he healed the lame and the blind. Still, it was an assertion of authority, not over people, but an authority over sicknesses. So if you look at chapter 21 of the book of Matthew, the concept of authority is undeniable. It's there. It's very clear. And because of what Jesus did, asserting his authority in the temple, he got into another conflict. The conflict between him and the priest and the elders who were perceiving themselves to be the authorities inside the temple. So after Jesus turned those tables upside down, he went away, and then the following day, he went back to the temple. When he arrived there, he was confronted by the priest and the elders. Because these were the guys who were considered as authorities in the temple. And so they asked him, by whose authority did you do all those things? Whose authority are you bringing? And Jesus, looking at them, responded this way. He said, I will answer your question if you will answer first my question. I'll answer your query if you will answer my question. And here was the question of Jesus to them. He said, the baptism of John, okay? The baptism that John the Baptist conducted in the Jordan River, whose authority was he bringing? And the priest and the elders were silent. You know why? They were put in a dilemma. Because if they would say it was from heaven, then John the Baptist, when he baptized individuals in the Jordan River, when he saw Jesus, he said, behold, the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world. Meaning to say, John the Baptist is telling every one of them who were baptized and who were just mirons there at the Jordan River, he was telling them, here comes the Messiah. And if he is from heaven, the words that he spoke really was authoritative as well. And yet, so when they would say, it's from heaven, Jesus would tell them, then you should have believed him with what he said. And why are you questioning me right now? So they could not answer, it's from heaven. Now they are left with the next option. It's not heavenly authority. That's still a problem for the priests and the elders. You know why? Because the people who listened to the preaching of John believed him to be a prophet of God. So the people who believed John to be a prophet could not accept if the priests and the elders would say his authority is not from heaven. The people will get mad of the priest and the elders in that case. So looking at this scenario, Jesus brought them into a dilemma, and the only answer they gave to him was, we don't know. And Jesus told them, because you didn't answer my question, then I won't answer your question as well. So they left frustrated. And since that time on, their anger before Jesus about Jesus was growing so deeply and stronger that they wanted to eradicate him, that they wanted him to be away from them. So they started thinking of how are we going to create a trap that will bring him down. And here comes chapter 22. They devise a trap. In the text that we read, the trap came with a flattery. You know, when you make a trap, you be sure that there is a bait, right? If you go fishing, you don't just bring hook, line, and sinker. You don't just bring these things. You need to have a bait. Because no matter how long you would put your sinker and your hook on the water, even if you stay there for a day, you will not catch anything. Why? Because you don't have a bait. So when you have something like that, you need to have a bait. And what did they do? Their bait was a flattery. They said to Jesus, "Teacher." Oh, by the way, who were these people? This time, it wasn't the priests and the elders, but this time, it was the Pharisees. It was the Herodians. So they were the Pharisees and the Herodians. And ironically, these two groups don't agree with each other. One thing that they disagree about, the Herodians, they like to submit to the Roman government. The Pharisees, they hated the Roman government. Because during this time, Israel was under the Roman rule. And so that's something that they don't agree about. And yet this time, because they had a common enemy, then they were together. Di ba ganun yun? Minsan, hindi kayo nagkakaintindihan, but there is someone that you both hate. In that point of time, you become friends. I hate you, you hate me. We don't like each other, but we both hate him. Let's be friends for this time. And that's why the Pharisees and the Herodians were together, coming to Jesus, designing a plot to trap him. And the trap came with a flattery. What did they say about him? They said, "Teacher, we know that you are truthful and teach the way of God in truth." And they said, "And differ to no one, for you are not partial to any." Now, if you are a leader, these two descriptions given here are the best descriptions that a leader could receive. What are these descriptions? That your leadership, that you as a person, you are embodied by the truth from heaven. Second is that you are impartial, meaning you are just in your way of dealings. And you can see this kind of concept described to a leader in the Old Testament times several times. And this is something that a leader would experience flattery. And so they attributed this to Jesus. Jesus, teacher, we know that you are embodying truth in your life and in your teaching, and you are just in your dealings. So now, they said, here comes the trap. So now, tell us then, what do you think? Is it lawful to give a poll tax to Caesar or not? Is it lawful to give a poll tax to Caesar or not? What is a poll tax? A poll tax is something that you remit as a sign of your allegiance and respect to the authorities. And so they were asking now, is it lawful for us Jewish people to remit to submit poll tax, to give poll tax to Caesar or not? How did it become a trap? Why is it called a trap? If Jesus would say, yes, it is lawful, you know what would happen? The Herodians would be very happy. But the Pharisees would hate him more. Because when he says it is lawful, he's telling the rest of the people that I am supporting the Roman government. And the Jewish people hated the Roman government. They didn't like it. They did not like these foreigners exerting power over them. They hated them, and there was much tax that was implemented on their shoulders, so they hated taxation, they hated the government. And if Jesus would say it is lawful, then he is supporting the government and the people would hate him. But if Jesus would say that it is not lawful, you know what would happen? The Herodians would have a reason to file a case against him. Maybe sedition. And so Jesus is put in this kind of scenario. Truly, in Bisayan, panimalus gyud ni ba? Why? Because when they met the Pharisees and the elders, that similar thing with what Jesus did to them. When they were asked whose authority was the baptism of John, they were put in a dilemma to answer either yes or no, but they didn't answer it with those answers. And so they really tried to form a trap that is similar to that, and Jesus' answer was so fascinating. Jesus recognized their evil intention, and he said to them, you are hypocrites. And he said to them, give me a coin that you used to pay the poll tax. Give me a coin. And they gave him the denarius, okay? This is what they used to pay the tax, a denarius coin. Now, in that particular coin, there was a face of a man, and there are inscriptions on that coin. In that coin, you would see the face of Caesar. In that coin, you would see inscriptions about Caesar. And so when he held the coin, he said to them, whose image, whose face, whose likeness is here? And they said, Caesar's. That's what you would see on the coin. The image of Caesar, the likeness of Caesar is there. And listen to the answer of Jesus. Jesus said to them, then render to Caesar what is Caesar's, and to God what is God's. Wait a minute, what did he mean by that answer? The concept of an image that I told you about at the very beginning of this sermon. When an object bears an image or an inscription, it means that that inscription, that image is an authority that has the power over that particular object. And because the Israelites were under the Roman rule, they were using the Roman coin. And because they were using the Roman coin, it is only right that for everyone to perceive that they are under the authority of Rome. And because they are under the authority of Rome, then they ought to pay their taxes. You see, this concept is real even in our time today. Those of you na naabutan nyo pa yung mga coins natin na mas malaki pa ang value ng peso. Remember, our coins back then, we had Jose Rizal. It's a 1 peso na coin. When you use that money here in the Philippines, you can use that to buy anything. Of course, yung papasok lang din sa value niya. Back then, 1 piso, 4 na candy. When I was a small boy, 1 peso, 4 candies, 25 sin kada candy. Tira-tira, 4 ka buok, ug na kay piso. So that's what we use. Ug kulang ang kwarta, mauray pang snack sa recess. But there was a face of Rizal. What do we mean by that? Rizal is considered to be our national hero. Meaning, national hero of what country? The Philippines. Because you are using the coin, that coin, you are within the jurisdiction of the Philippine government. Okay? If you go to Japan and you bring your 1 sack of 1 peso, kay mo imong alkansya, and you would use that there to buy, they won't accept it. Why? Because it is not under the jurisdiction of the Philippine government anymore. Your peso will not be acceptable in another country. In the same manner, if you are living in South Korea and you decide to spend your vacation in the Philippines, you need to find a money changer before flying here or at the airport of the Philippines so that you can exchange your Korean money to the Philippine peso. Why? Because we are not under the Korean government's jurisdiction. So the money that you use would determine whose government you are under. Following? Now, since the coin that they were using had the face of Caesar, the inscription of Caesar, then they ought to pay taxes to Caesar because they are under the Roman rule. But the answer of Jesus didn't end in that statement. There is another line that he said. This is what he said on the first line. Render to Caesar what is Caesar's, and then render to God, or to God, what belongs to God, or what is God's. Now, wait a minute. Are they also using coins with God's inscription or with the face of God on it? There is none. There is no coin in the Roman period that talks about God. In fact, Caesar was considered to be a god of the Romans. He was considered a high priest of the Romans. So if you think about it, there was no coin that they used that had God's face and God's inscription. But what did Jesus mean when he said, render to Caesar what belongs to Caesar and render to God what belongs to God? As Jesus was standing conversing with the Pharisees and these individuals, the Herodians, as they were waiting for his answer, Jesus looked at them and he saw every human being standing before him. And it shall remind us, while there is no coin with the face of God, while there is no money with the inscriptions about God, listen very carefully. When you see every human being standing, it shall remind you about what God said in Genesis chapter 1 verse 26. What did he say there? God himself spoke. He said, let us make man in our image, in our likeness. What are we seeing here? Yes, the Jewish people were under the Roman authority because they used the coin that had a face, the image of Caesar. But as you look at every individual standing, every man is under the authority of God, because we will never come into existence without God creating us according to his image and his likeness. We may be under an authority as a form of a government. Wherever we may go, we shall never forget, we owe it all to God. We owe it all to him. Without him creating us according to his image and likeness, we are nothing. The authority of the Philippine government over us, in the way we use money, it's only within the jurisdiction of the Philippine land. You go outside, you need to use another currency. But wherever you go in the world, you bear the image of God in you. And that shall remind everyone, wherever we go in this world, even if we cross to another planet, the authority of God over our lives remains, because that won't be changed. We bear the image and likeness of God. You put away money, you still have yourself. You put away your life, you have nothing. You take away the image of God in us, we are gone. That is why when we think of an authority set, Jesus is advocating that his children would submit to the government. But as we do that, let us not forget that our ultimate allegiance is towards our Creator, who reigns over our lives, both today and for eternity. The authority of God is permanent. The authority of the government, it may change. But listen very carefully. Jesus, as I have said, is advocating for you and me to submit to the authority. Meaning to say, since you are created in the image of God, since you are redeemed by Christ, you belong to Him. And because you belong to Him, He expects you to be a good Filipino citizen. A good Filipino citizen is someone who submits to the authority of the government. So, as God's people, when the government says, pay your tax, we need to pay our taxes. When the traffic rules would say, don't U-turn, then do not U-turn. When the light turns red, it doesn't mean go faster. It means stop. We need to stop. Because God's child, who bears the image of God, is a good Filipino citizen. Jesus is advocating that we shall submit to the authority of the government. And yet, while we do that, let us not forget that our ultimate authority and allegiance shall be towards God. One day will come when the end of everything will commence. We call it the end times. When this world would come to an end, one of the predicted things that would happen is the reign of the Antichrist. And a high possibility of a new world order when the Antichrist dictates the government and it says something that violates the word of God and God Himself. The allegiance of the believers shall remain for God, because in that case, the government violates God already. That's why in the U.S., when they had that rule that prohibits Christian to preach the gospel and to pray in public, there were many Americans who were imprisoned. Why? Because Christians cannot take that rule. Because the mandate of Jesus is for us to live out our Christianity and tell the world about what He did. Share to others about His love and grace. That's what we are commanded to do. So when the government tells us, stop preaching, we shall not abide with that. When the government tells us, you are not allowed to mention the name of Jesus, that's a different story. But when the government tells us, you abide the traffic rules, we must abide. Because it doesn't violate any biblical rule. Meaning, when the government that is above us today is there, it was placed by God. God allowed it. We shall submit to it. And yet, in the end times, when the Antichrist will rule, our allegiance shall remain towards Him. Him alone. It's our way of saying, over my dead body. You know, the debate about the possibility of accepting same-sex marriage in the Philippines has been discussed several times. Among the Christian and Missionary Alliance churches ministers, we talked about it already. And we said we cannot compromise. If that time will come and they will push the church to officiate weddings of the same-sex marriage, we will not. Why? Because it violates the sanctity of God's design. They would say, we will imprison you. So be it. Dito day mi mawali sa prisuhan. I have friends in Vietnam, my classmates before in the international school. The government stopped them from preaching the gospel. But my classmates said, we cannot do that. That's the mandate of Jesus Christ to us. So they continued preaching. O di gidakop sila. They were caught. They were brought to the prison. Gipriso. While inside the prison, they continued sharing the gospel. They sang praise and worship songs inside the prison. In a matter of 5 days, ingon ang jail warden, papaulian na silang tanan kay mahimong Christian ang mga piniriso. When the government violates the rule of God, it's a different story. But so long that the government is there for justice, for order, and the truth of God, we are commanded by Jesus as well to abide in the authority. Because, as He said, render to Caesar what is Caesar's, and to God what belongs to God. Our highest authority is God because we are bearers of the image of God in our lives. God bless you all, and good evening.